And we are live. It's the Dave K Show. How's everybody doing out there in this kind of dreary day, Saturday, May the 10th, 2019? We're so glad to have you guys out there today. We have a very special guest in the studio, as always. Our guests always seem to be getting better and better. Before we get started, I want to go ahead and put a plug out for PointeCoupeeReporter.com. Our friends over at PointeCoupeeReporter.com are so gracious enough to put us on their website on the front page and let you see everything that's going on here at the Dave K Show. PointeCoupeeReporter.com is a good source to find out news on the net about Pointe Coupee. Listing links to articles about Pointe Coupee from area media is their specialty, but you'll find original articles there too. Dial them up on the web at PointeCoupeeReporter.com, and you'll see this episode today later on PointeCoupeeReporter.com. Okay, without further ado, we have a very special guest in the studio today. With me is none other than the Reverend George Molex III, otherwise known as the Traveling Echo. Mr. George, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Awesome, but it's so good to have you. We got a lot to talk about today. You're a very witty person, first of all, and I love talking to you because you come up with so many good little tidbits that we can take out for our lives. You've been living in Morganza pretty much all your life. And you got a lot to tell about Morganza, growing up in Pointe Coupee Parish and everything. And you also wrote, I think you wrote a play, right? A very interesting play that we're going to talk about, which is I found to be pretty fascinating. So without further ado, Mr. George, tell us what you got going on and tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
I was born in New Orleans in the Charity Hospital, but I call my home Morganza.
Yes.
So you might call me an urban country boy.
Right. I like it.
And like John Denver, I said, thank God I'm a country boy. And I thank God for all the things that I've been through in life, the negative and the positive. I often think of Louisiana being number one or number two in domestic violence. And I kind of recall some episodes in my life when my parents we went through some moments, but later on, Dad became converted, and everything, well, up and down, but it still was a beautiful relationship. I love my mother and father just as equal, but I always like to sometimes talk about some of those things that I go through because I realize in life that we all, in our diversity, that's something that unifies us, something that collectivizes us in the sense that we become one in our experiences. And I don't mind talk about my nightmares or my dreams.
Right. Yeah, we all have those, right? We all have them. If you don't have them, I don't know who you are, but right. So let's go back way in the beginning. You know, growing up in Morganza and everything. I know, obviously, to become a preacher, a pastor, you felt the calling of God on your life. Did you grow up in church?
I grew up in church, and we had something called the morning bench. This is part of the Baptist tradition, and you had to stay on the morning bench until you have some type of personal relationship with God. Even today, I'll say I may be a pastor, but I tell my congregation I may be your pastor, but the Lord is your shepherd.
Yes.
And I said, I had a young man one time say, I sure like to follow you. I said, no, if you follow me, you become a Moletian. I want you to be like me, Moletian. A Christian. As I follow Christ, you follow Christ. And so it's very, I never forget that. Well, the day I came through, my day was a Wednesday in 1963. When this last month in April of 1963, I don't remember the specific day, but I remember that date. And by a school called the Bar Elementary School, little school. One of my classmates, we had two doors at the back of the school. I'm behind one door praying, he was behind the other door praying. And I had a mystical experience, I'll never forget. I was glad it was recess because if it wasn't recess, I don't think I should have had that experience in the classroom. Right. But it was like a cloud of angels came around and they were singing a song, an old familiar song that I wasn't familiar at that time because I was young. And it was Lord Have Mercy. And like the whole essence of my life was vibrated by that song. And I never forget that experience. And every now and then I go back to that experience and it kind of revitalizes me as an individual.
Right, right. And so after that experience happened, how old were you at that time?
I was 11 years old.
11. Wow.
It was 1963. Yeah, I was 11 years old.
Wow. So at what point in time did you feel a higher calling to be a pastor?
My higher calling was in North Carolina. I was going to Duke University. I did a little time in the seminary. And I asked the Lord, I said, what is it that you want me to be or do? Because when that was educational opportunities, I just took the grants and stuff and just, I had a passion for learning. I'm from that old school where I just wanted to learn. And I never forget this experience. September 4th, should be the Labor Day weekend, and 1976. The spirit of 76.
Right, right. More ways than one.
And so I was in the boarding house with some friends of mine. We live off campus. Everybody was going home except for me because my home was in Louisiana. They was in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to sleep asking the Lord, what is it that you really want me to do? And I had this mystical experiences, like being caught in between an elevator, between two floors.
Right.
And some people call it a trance. I call it a trance too because I was fully awakened, but I was fully asleep. Mm. And a voice came into the little crack in the window because it was kind of hot at that time. And the voice was not a ordinary voice, and the flooring of the wind was not ordinary wind. It seemed to be an inseparable experience.
That's incredible. Wow.
And it took a while in this trance, laying down on my back. It took a nosedive like an airplane. I could see the, not actually an airplane, but it seemed like something diving down. And it went inside my uttermost being, parts of my being that I did not experience. My guts had more sense than my brain.
Right.
And it said one thing, I'll preach, you preach. And the guts was growling.
Right.
And it's saying, yes. Then finally it came to my intellectual part, and I accepted the calling.
Wow, that's amazing. And as we say, the rest is history.
The rest is history.
So what brought you back to Morganza?
The Greyhound bus.
Right. That too, right?
Yeah, I came back home because I felt that my calling was leading me back to my roots, so to speak. In fact, even though my first sermon was preached in a little town called Apex, North Carolina.
Wow.
And Apex means the highest peak,
Yes.
And I asked the Lord, because it's a Christian Methodist Episcopal church. It used to be called the Colored Methodist Episcopal Church. But I being a Baptist, but also, I had friends of different denomination, and the guy said, well, the Lord called you to preach. I want you to preach at my little church in Apex. I said, well, Apex means the highest peak.
Right.
And then I went back to the drawing board and praised the most. And look, Lord, you got me at Apex. Now what you want me to say?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the song was Come Down Off That Mountain. And it had to do with that part when Jesus was on the Mount of Transfiguration with Peter, James, and John. And when it came down off the mountain, was a little child was vexed with some type of spirit. Mm-hmm. And the other 9 disciples was bragging about who was the greatest. And I tell you, somewhere in that scenario, Jesus pulled a child out of the crowd and said, I'll let you be like that child. And then he said to take fasting really to get rid of this type of spirit. So it was telling me that I don't care what peaks that we may reach, where we be somewhere in the apex, we should have the humility to serve.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And of course, that hit home with you. And everything is kind of figurative and literal too, because you're Apex, North Carolina, preaching your sermon, And the scripture says, come down off that mountain. So in other words, go back to Morganza maybe.
Right.
And get with your people and set up a home base pretty much.
That's right.
And that's real interesting how God works and everything like that. So what year was this approximately when you came back to Morganza and you got everything set up?
No, I got ordained in the ministry actually in 1977.
77.
To the what you call Pointe Coupee Minister Conference.
Is that still going on now, the conference?
The conference is doing great. They're taking a lot of interest. And I think, even though I'm not an active member as of now, because also affiliated with the Southern Baptists, so, but my affiliations are with my experiences and my relationship. And I think everybody that I come in contact, I try to see the potential of a relationship.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Having a church through the years, it's been quite a few years since you've been a pastor, so you've seen a lot of people come and go, right?
Just like fishing.
Yes, right.
Yeah. Sometimes you have a nice congregation, and sometimes it's dwindling around. Sometimes because of death, sometimes because of people have to move because of jobs or other reasons, or they may find themselves, God sent them to another place, which is great,
Sure, I find that even with my church, I've been going there for 30 years. You got that core group of people that stay, right? And those are the faithful ones, so to speak. But other people come and go for different reasons because they may want to go start a church somewhere. They may be moving. Their family's moving out of town. Right. Some people just find it's not the church that fits with them.
Right.
And but you thank God for that core group of people that stay. The mothers, the wives, the kids, the husbands, the ones that cook, and the ones that do stuff in the church. And so I'm sure you have that core group of people in your church too, right?
Yes, I'm reminded of Jesus, who's the greatest pastor, and he still is pastor to me and everybody who find himself part of the Christian faith. He actually is our pastor. I find the scripture that I had a person one time who wanted to join another church, but they wanted me to persuade them to stay. And I thought about what Jesus told his disciples when he told the 12, would you leave also? And it's kind of strange for a pastor to ask the congregation to have a benediction
right.
before the invocation.
Right.
But then I thought about it. I was not there to try to persuade a person to go anywhere. My job is, as an instrument, is to lift up the Lord.
Yes.
And he'll do the drawing, wherever the drawing may be.
Right, absolutely.
And so I didn't persuade them anyway. And like I said, if they wanted to come back after all those years, they can come back. Wherever the Lord lead them, or what they say the Lord lead them. And sometimes the Lord don't necessarily lead people. They may have fallen out with me for some reason,
right,
or fallen out with some other member.
Right, they're trying to find that perfect church.
Trying to find a perfect church.
Does that perfect church exist? I don't know.
It does not exist. My pastor, who's deceased, said, if you want to leave the church, that's fine, but try to find something that's familiar with your experience. But at the same time, remember, the demons in this church. You have to discover the demons somewhere else.
Right.
But that's your decision.
Exactly.
And I took that on that philosophy.
Right. And somebody once said that if you do find the perfect church, once you start going there, it won't be perfect anymore.
You mess it up. Sure enough.
Right, exactly.
Yes, indeed.
That's cool. So I hear that you wrote a play, right?
Right.
So have you written stuff in the past? Is this your first venture into writing?
No, I wrote several plays. One of my favorite plays is called Elvis Michael.
Elvis Michael.
Yes, he's a fictitious son of Lisa Marie Presley and Michael Jackson.
Wow. And of course, they did get married.
They did get married,
yes.
but
no kids, though.
I created the kid.
Right. And, interesting.
So he's like Elvis, and he's like Michael.
Right. So how in the world did you get the inspiration to write this story? This is amazing.
It come from a song that I wrote years ago called Brand New Song, which is an anti-drug, anti-violence song, which is said, I ain't got time messing around pushing that dope and getting all high. I have a brand new song. And then I think about the opiate epidemic that's gone on, and how it affects all walks of life and all people. And it just came to me to create that play. And fortunately, in that play, it has religious overtone. So unlike Grandpa and Papa, the king of rock and roll and the king of pop, the king of rock pop is redeemed through the voices of the past, and at the same time to some type of religious experience that he had that enabled him to be alive today.
Right. So imagine what kind of child could have came out of Lisa Marie and Elvis. That would have been pretty interesting, how's that character in your play? I mean, what kind of person is he?
He's a person who dismisses everyone who means well to him, because he already inherited a plateau, and he doesn't necessarily need to have advice. But there's certain characters, Michelle, who happen to be his girlfriend, who always try to give him a reality check.
Right.
And he's the type of person who need a checkup from his neck up.
Right.
And for somehow, when he's about to OD, I'm giving away a lot of things, she is there to call 911. She's the one who's by his bedside. She's the one that he sees when he recovers. And somewhere in his almost semi-comatose state, he hears his grandfather singing the gospel, which he got a lot of his grammar was from the gospel.
Yes. Started out.
He hears Michael singing songs that has religious overtone. The one that he did with all of them did together with "We Are the World" and all that stuff. And, some like "Man in the Mirror" and all that stuff. And all these things echoes in his conscience, along with Michelle, who's by his bedside, and he began to recover.
Wow.
He's a recovering addict.
Right. Wow, that's awesome. How long is the play, minute-wise? Is it like a short one or a long one?
It lasted about an hour, because I had a good karaoke team to do some music.
Gotta have that.
I couldn't afford no musicians, so I was fortunate enough. I do some karaoke myself, and I had some people who helped me out. A lot of folks helped me out, and so it was a musical as well as a play.
Right.
And
interesting.
In that time span, it was an hour.
Right. How do is it still going on now, or has it been video? Can anybody watch it or anything?
Unfortunately, it wasn't video, and I wish I did video, but it wasn't video this time. But this new play that I have called Searching, I'm hoping that a certain person who is in my close vicinity.
All right. You might be watching.
We're also we have a video this time around.
Good. Like we talked about earlier, there's no reason why with iPhones and cameras we can video anything with high quality nowadays. So
that's right.
Definitely make sure. So is that film been written already? And what's the process now of what you're doing? Pre-production?
I have it written and copywritten.
Okay.
Took a little while to write it, but like I said, it is it's art imitating life as life imitates art.
Right.
Just about everything that came to me is based on some type of experience that I have had, or some type of way of me being empathetic to someone else's experience.
Right, and those are the best stories, because I write short films and everything, and those are the best stories that come out of the real life experiences that you experience.
Right.
Nobody can tell your story the way you experience it, or in your mind, or
that's right
in real life.
That's right.
And you can tell those stories. The ones that are really, really good are the ones that come from the heart, because in Hollywood, people are paid to write movies that sell. They never experience anything. They just want to think of a cool storyline with a lot of action, a lot of guns, a lot of explosions. Right. People got to pay tickets to go see this movie. You know, I got away from that a long time ago. I like to see the heartfelt stories, the ones that hit me to my heart and challenge me to be a better person, or make me relive experiences in my life through somebody else. Those to me are the best stories.
Yeah.
They really, really are. So searching. So what's going to be some updates so we can find out about what's going on? Is it going to be performed locally, or how can we see searching in the churches or anything?
Mm-hmm. It will be performed in Pointe Coupee Parish locally at the Jewish Pottery Center, June the 22nd at 2019.
Awesome, right here.
5 p.m. Tickets, adults 10, under 12 will be 5. So it'll be something like charity begin at home and spread abroad. I think if you can make it the demographics of the familiar, there's no such thing as venturing into the unknown.
Right. I like that. That's great. Well, that is good. I cannot wait to see it. So once again, that's going to be June next month?
June 22nd.
June 22nd here at the Julian Partridge Arts Center and Museum in New Roads, Louisiana, 500 Main Street in New Roads, for anybody that don't know where that is. Hey, if you don't have to be from Pointe Coupee. If you're from Baton Rouge, wherever you're watching this, Baton Rouge, ain't too far to come out here to New Roads and watch a really, really good play, something that's going to challenge you and inspire you. Right. I plan on being here too, of course. We talked about that earlier.
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
Exactly. Can't wait to see it. Can't wait to see it. So it's gonna be really good. So all right. So I want to go talk about switching things a little bit here about Morganza. Okay. So Morganza is the next biggest thing coming up again, because in the heyday, Morganza, was kind of a thriving community, with the railroad tracks going through town, LA1 going through Morganza, people coming and going to work. We had a lot of businesses back in the day. I'm 51 years old, but I do remember 10, 12 years old, my grandfather going through Morganza and going to the store and everything. We used to have a grocery store. As other small communities in the past, these once bustling communities have kind of gone by the wayside. The population generally gets older. People start moving out. The kids would go to college. They move off. The older population stays. You've stayed in Morganza through the years. You've hung it. You've stayed tried and true. Morganza is the next big thing coming up, because we got the Morganza Revitalization District going, which I'm a board member of, and so we want to see Morganza become that thriving community again, and I think we can do it. I think we can. And so I want to talk about some past experiences you had in Morganza. What are some highlights growing up in this little town called Morganza that you can remember?
Well, we call Morganza the Big M.
The Big M.
And I went to Southern University as a freshman. Everybody just talk about where they're from, and everybody seemed to be ashamed of where they were from. But I always said, ask me where I'm from. I'm from the Big M. I said, where's the Big M? Is it Memphis?
Right.
Is it Minneapolis? I said, no, it's Morganza. I said, where's Morganza? I said, well, where are you from? He said, I'm from New Orleans. I said, Morganza, I'm from Baton Rouge. I said, it's got something called the Morganza Spillway.
Right.
And even for the Morganza Spillway, that wouldn't be in the Baton Rouge or New Orleans.
That's
because
true.
we divert the water in another direction.
Yes, that's right. Yes, that's right.
So so I had to correct him about the significance of this geographical place called Morganza.
Yes, Morganza, the Big M. That's right.
The Big M.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go to school at the schoolhouse in Morganza?
Yeah, we had a school in Morganza. It was a church school, Starlight Baptist Church, where I'm the pastor.
Yeah.
In fact, not too long ago, there was a team of archaeologists from LSU who came to dig up some of the relics from the old school building, because we had separate but equal at the time that I come up. And one of the young ladies, I can't think of her name, she made her dissertation was separate and unequal education in Morganza. So I came to a diverse experience, and which is a microcosm of the nation in terms of reconstructions and different things that the nation itself have been through. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I think everybody should be proud of wherever they came from, because it don't make no difference who you are, what background or ethnicity that you're from. There's only one race, that's the human race.
That's right.
And everybody, if you look beyond 400 years or beyond 1,000 years, everybody has messed up.
Yes.
And if you look at the, especially us men, and we all have at one time miseducated the children and mistreated the women. Mm-hmm. So that type of legacy, if we look at things in a holistic perspective, will make us appreciate something like Ancestral.com, where we can really find out through DNA and modern technology how really closely related that we all are.
Yes, that's right.
The world is a neighborhood that seeks to be a brotherhood, but we are more a brotherhood in our different neighborhoods because we are one father's children.
Right. And a lot of people talk about the 6 degrees of separation where, you know, in the whole world, you know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody 6 times, that could connect everybody against the whole world.
That's right.
And just think, if that's just knowing somebody, then the relative part and the actual being related to these people have to be even a closer bond than that.
That's right.
So, and like you said, we all came from common ancestors, and
right.
It filtered down through the. Everybody has red blood, is what I always say. You know, you cut somebody, they got red blood.
That's right. I love what the late Louis Armstrong said, and the way he put it. He said, "Cats are the same all the way around the world."
Right.
And
that's true.
And that's so true. You know, you can't distinguish one if everything was sound and was not sight, and you hear a stomach bubbling or growling, you couldn't distinguish whether it was black or white.
True, that's right. That's true. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Just like a lot of people say, you know, money is green.
That's right.
And it don't matter where you get the money from, it's green.
That's right. That makes sense, you know.
That's right. You'll take it, right. Well, that's very good. So, growing up in Morganza, did y'all actually, leave Morganza on a regular basis to go do other things, or was everything self-sufficient in the day, like grocery store, shopping? Of course, church. You had church right there in Morganza.
Mm-hmm. I would say there was a great degree of self-sufficiency.
Because Nero's was just right down the road, 10 minutes down the road.
Right. Raised hogs, raised chicken. We made gardens, and somehow we found that this organic material that people talk about today was some of the things that made us healthy, you know.
Yeah.
We had all kind of remedies that are pharmaceutical products today. So.
Right. Yeah. Back in the day. Yeah. All the castor oil and all of that. Whatever.
Something called acid fixative. You may not know. It would be a cure for just about everything.
Wow. Right. That's amazing. Remember the monkey blood? Everybody. My grandma had the monkey blood.
Right.
That stuff fixed everything.
Fixed everything. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, it sounds great. So, looking forward to seeing your play coming up pretty soon. Anything else you want to kind of tell us about Morganza back in the day? Because, like I said, you had mentioned the Easy Rider event coming up.
Right.
Was you around when Easy Rider was filmed back in 60, whatever it was, 67 or 68?
Yeah, I was around. I remember the cafe that was where it was filmed. A guy named Dennis, I can't take his name. He gave all us Cokes and things. I never forget that.
Oh, Dennis Hopper?
Dennis Hopper.
Yeah,
Dennis
star,
Hopper.
Yes.
And Jack Nicholson was
Yep.
part of that, and Peter Fonda.
That's right.
And I remember vividly because I was young, and but those actors were very open-minded people and very congenial, and they were very hospitable in terms of the whole aspects of Morganza.
Yeah, and back then of the day, a lot of these actors were just up and coming. They were young. They haven't really become big stars yet.
That's right.
So it was really cool to see how they acted back in the heyday, you know, and how they act now, which is they've become millionaires and everything.
Oh,
so
they were cool.
Yeah, that sounds good. And another thing that really kind of intrigued me about Easy Rider was a lot of people from Morganza are ashamed of that movie because of obvious drug overtones and stuff like that. But I tell people when they say they're ashamed of Easy Rider being filmed in Morganza, you got to think the writer was trying to tell a story. Okay, so Morganza could have been any city they could have filmed in.
That's right.
And we were helping this writer tell his story.
That's right.
You may not have agreed with it. I don't agree with drugs either, but that's a story that they were telling. And to me, I'm proud to say that Morganza was involved in a film that is kind of like maybe an icon or something or whatever, or a classic film, I guess you could say.
That's right.
Telling somebody's story. And I always say, they say, well, I'm not going to go see that movie because it's rated R. Well, guess what? Life is rated R.
That's true.
And if I'm a writer and a director, I write short films and stuff and everything. And sometimes the subject matter, the Bible is rated R. Sometimes the Bible is rated X when you look at it.
Yes, definitely.
But the Bible tells real life stories of real life people. And like you were saying, with skeletons in your closet and everything, that is humanity. That is
right.
And I believe as a story writer and a storyteller, to be true to yourself, you need to tell your story unfiltered.
That's right.
And if people don't like it, they don't have to watch it.
That's true. Because, I always believe in a clientele over a customer.
Right.
Because there's always somebody out there that don't care what you do, don't like it. Even Jesus himself, he said, I did not drink. I did drink wine and did certain things, and they said I was possessed by a demon. John the Baptist had a special diet of locusts and wild honey. They said he had a demon. But say, well, God knows both of us,
Yes.
And so, and not a mistake, Easy Rider is one of the top 100 films of all time.
Yes.
And you got The Godfather, you got all kinds of things.
Exactly.
Going with the Wind. Lots of films had some negative overtone, but it's part of our history.
Yes.
And at the same time, it's part of our development as a nation.
Yes. That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Even the classic show like Roots, which I watched several times.
Right.
It was stuff that wasn't good to look at. It wasn't even good to remember those things, but they're telling a story that needs to be kept alive because you know what? If you don't remember your mistakes in the past, you're gonna repeat them.
That's right. That's right.
So that's what's important about those kind of shows.
And then you think about the trafficking that's going on today, which is a form of slavery.
Yes, big thing going on right now.
So it's a lot of things. If you look at history in a holistic, comprehensive way, man in humanity toward man. In the very first family, you had a murderer. So
yes.
you got to look at history in a holistic perspective. I wrote a poem called Mixed Relations, and it said that black people have the altered skin tone syndrome. White people have the copper tone syndrome.
Right.
So
right.
But God made you wherever, you're part of a rainbow, and I don't care who you are. We all are guilty of some things, and if I point one finger at you, I got 4 pointed back at me.
Yes.
And one of my favorite comedians was Red Skelton.
Yes.
He laughed at his own jokes. He didn't care whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I have that type of attitude, And when I look at people, I don't try to, even though society is not perfect, and I'm not perfect. And if you don't know the history, you will be condemned to repeat the history.
Yes.
But at the same time, I know that the history has spanned beyond hundreds of years. It's thousands of years. And you can go back to Nebuchadnezzar. And you go back to Pharaoh, Genghis Khan. And when you see different ethnicities in those examples of Alexander the Great, Caesar, Napoleon.
Right.
Hitler, Idi Amin,
Right.
So you look at certain genocides, and it comes from all areas of the globe.
Yes.
And sometimes we've got to come to the awareness. That's why I really love Ancestry.com for some reason, because something about that DNA that kind of shows that we are more common than diverse.
Yes, that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you look at it on a technical basis, it's exactly right. People look at the outward appearance too much.
That's right.
And they don't realize that is great. And I think the important thing about what you're saying too is to be in a forward-moving state of mind too many people want to let the past hold them back.
That's right. That's right.
Move forward.
Move
Now,
forward.
look, let me tell you what. Now is the best time in the world to live in the history of mankind.
That's true.
The opportunities are there for everybody. There's
right.
no excuse for somebody not to succeed. I have not succeeded as much as I wanted because guess what? Like you said, you point the finger at somebody, 4 point. I'm the problem. I haven't succeeded and been
That's
as
right.
successful as I wanted to. And I realize that. So I'm making up for lost time right now because I'm not getting any older. And I'm like, I'm supercharging all the things I ever want to do in my life because I realized when I turned 50 years old that, dude, I'm probably on the second half of my lifespan right now. I got to get with it. And I'm talking to everybody out there, and Reverend Molex is too. Now is the time, better than any time before, to get your plans, find out what God wants you to do in your life, find out what your skills are, what your interests are, and start doing them.
I love the word noun because you take the noun and turn it upside down, and you got OWN. Some things you need to own.
Right.
You got WON, which is a positive thing. You won. The greatest. I had a professor told me, said the greatest struggle you ever had were the billions of possibilities of you being conceived.
Wow.
You already won the greatest battle. All this other stuff is lamb yap.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yes. Yep. Absolutely. That's what makes abortion such a horrible sin.
It is. I love Jeremiah 1:5. If I'm correct, he said, "Before you was in your mother's womb, I knew you."
Yes.
And people always talk about when a human became a human. Well, when Mary went to visit Elizabeth, John the Baptist leaped in his mother's womb.
Yes, he did.
And we talk about how we can talk to plants and how they will respond positively if you talk to them positively. Well, let's have a positive aspect of the sacredness of human life.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. Yes, I appreciate that. And that's I think a core problem of humanity is the sacredness of human life. When you get down to all the hate crimes and the murders and anything else that's inhumanity to man against himself and everything, it all boils down to the sin nature. Of course, it's we all sin. We need a savior, but it's just finding love in your heart is the thing, and that would help humanity out so much if people could learn to love their fellow mankind.
I think hate crimes are a crime against self. Because
explain that.
Well, the Bible says, "Love thy neighbor as thyself."
Interesting.
So if you love yourself, you can automatically love other folks.
Wow, that's good.
Now, if you don't love me, if you don't love yourself, please don't love me because that means that you take me out because you actually do not love yourself.
Right. Reverend Molex, talk about the importance of the family unit because kids don't have fathers these days. Mothers are trying to raise kids by themselves. Talk a little bit about the importance of the family unit and how important it is.
Well, when you think about the family, I would say the first institution that was instituted by God when in relationship to humanity was the family unit. Now, ideally, you may not have the type of things that would constitute a nuclear family. You may have extended family. And I think Jesus Christ was the best example of how we should look at what a family is. Because in reality, Jesus was born out of wedlock. In reality, Mary was espoused to Joseph. She was not married to Joseph.
Right.
So for some reason, God would identify with the negatives so that he could make it a positive.
Yes.
He was developed, even though he was the king of kings and lords of lords, he was born in a stable. The bird have nests, the fox have holes, but the Son of Man had nowhere to lay his head. He was homeless. The people that we label in society as homeless, but then we call ourselves Christian, then we forget that Jesus was homeless and that Jesus was born out of wedlock.
Yes.
And so, to me, that's why I believe in I'm pro-life. There's no such thing really as an illegitimate birth because Jesus would be an illegitimate child.
Right.
And we don't want to go that route. You know?
That's the truth. Exactly.
I don't think we really want to go that route.
No, that's the truth.
So sometimes you got to be real careful how we label people, because God has a purpose for everybody. Mm-hmm. And even in the Bible, I can't call the name of this guy who, the little girl was an orphan, and when he came from battle, he's one of the judges. He said the first thing to come out of the house, he was dedicated to the Lord, and it happened to be this little girl that he adored. And that's one reason to say why, well, some people became nuns and all the different things, the mythology and the theology behind it. But the thing is that God would accept you, because in some reason, and I'm not condemning any faith, because your faith is based on your experience. Mm-hmm. But in the Bible, it really said, call no man father.
Yes.
Because I am your father. Mm-hmm. And even Jesus, when he was in the temple, he said, I was by my father's business.
Right.
Even when they came to Jesus and told him he was insane, he said, your mother, your brother's outside. Who is my mother? Who is my brother? Mm-hmm. Those who do the will of God.
Wow, that's good.
So some reason, blood may be thicker than water, but there's a friend that's closer than a brother. Right. And I say the spirit is thicker than blood.
Wow, that's awesome. That is great. Yeah, that's very, very good. And the thing about it is, why human life is all life is valuable, particularly human life. Human life is at the top of the list by far, of course. But because God is a creative life, He is life. The trees, like you were saying earlier, whenever when you talk to plants and you encourage them, plants flourish. Remember, they did a scientific study a while back where they talked bad about plants, and they just like they were talking to a human, the plants actually withered and died. So it goes to show that life is responsive to each other. Especially animals is another thing too. I love pets. I'm sure you love pets too.
Mm-hmm. Dog I love.
Yes.
Like a child.
Yes, absolutely. So dogs, dogs are another thing. Dogs, they're animals. They're a lower form of life and everything, of course. But they bring so much joy to humans and everything. And so it's amazing how a dog will connect with your personality. Like your dog knows you and loves you the best. They always say dogs are like loyal. They're loyal animals and everything, But it's incredible how all life, God made all life, and all life is sacred and everything, especially human beings, His crowning creation.
That's right.
Is
and I want to go on a limb to say my definition of illegitimacy is when Satan rebelled against God. Anybody who is blasphemous, who God have given them all type of opportunities and give them all type of testimonies, and they blatantly, with all that type of things that God's trying to reach us, deny God. To me, that is illegitimacy.
Interesting. Wow. That's true. That makes a lot of sense. So that's great. We're going to wrap the show up in a second here. We're hitting about the 45-minute mark right here, which is good. So is there anything else you want to go over? I see you have your tablet right here. Any other notes you want to go over? Because we're going to have you on again later on for some of your music once we get our studio completed. Okay. Yeah, because I definitely want to hear some songs that you wrote.
Okay. And I keep reminding you that my songs are somewhat secular and sacred.
Sure.
Because, I love country music. I love the lyrics. Mm-hmm. I love the blues. I love the gospel, which is the good news.
Right.
I love jazz. And to me, all the type of music I have a problem with, and that's just vulgarity. Mm-hmm. And I don't care how it comes or where it comes from. I don't like that because, to me, the people are the crown of God's creation. And I especially like to appeal to young men, and I'm going to use this example. Two men in the Bible, Samson and Solomon. Samson was the strongest man that ever lived. A woman found his weakness. Mm-hmm. Solomon was the wisest man that ever lived. The women made a fool out of Solomon. He's such a fool that he began to worship false gods. Mm. And I say to some of us men, and I'm not trying to put us down in any kind of sense, but sometimes we are not as wise as Solomon or strong as Samson. And keep in mind that women was made from our rib, which means they're not behind us, before us. and they are helpmates besides us. But at the same time, and I'm using this word besides again, they don't mean that we should be besides ourselves.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yes, that is true. All right, so are you still doing weddings now as a pastor?
I do weddings as a pastor, right?
Awesome, very good. How many weddings have you done over the years, approximately?
Ooh,
It's always intriguing. Facts and numbers always intrigue me.
I really can't count them, really.
That's a lot, then. If you can't count them, that's a lot. That's a lot.
I do.
And of course, funerals too. I mean, you do all that stuff as a pastor: weddings, funerals.
Right. Even though we're really just commissioned for the Lord's Supper and baptism.
Right.
There are certain occasions that shows that our ministry is a service to humanity.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And my hat's off to you for taking the high calling of a pastor, because the Bible even warns the people who are pastors and over a large amount of people like that, they have a higher accountability. So it's like I actually looked at going into a ministerial school a while back and everything, but I didn't quite do it because I didn't have the time. So I kind of put it on the back burner for a little while. But I got to thinking, what an amazing, an awesome responsibility to have to be a pastor.
Well, unfortunately, this is some type of perspective, and I think that we must realize that we all, the only person that's infallible is God Almighty. I remember one time we had a ferry, now we have a bridge. But I don't know any person besides Jesus, and besides somebody who Jesus bid to come to him, who can walk on the water.
Right. Right. That's the truth. Mm-hmm. That is the truth. And he even gave that opportunity, but that's right. That takes a lot of faith, that's for sure.
That's right.
Well, that is great. So, like I said, if you have anything else you want to go over before we shut the program down for the day, any last words you want to say or anything?
Well, I like to say, if a lot of part of the play, if I can find someone who wants to volunteer in some kind of aspect to help to make this a great production.
Sure.
Sometimes you look for sponsorship, but I also learned that sometimes you got to sponsor your own ship.
True. I know all about that. Yes, definitely.
Excuse me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so how can people get in contact with you if they want more information?
You can contact me through 618-8252.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
That's 225-618-8252 if you want to contact Reverend George Molex III and help him out with any of his projects coming up, specifically his next play coming up, which is Searching, right? Searching.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a great play for sure. So that's great. So once again, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And this is only like part one of probably many parts to come. We're going to have you back. We're going to listen to some of your music. I want to hear some of your poetry. And when we get that set over here designed, we'll have you back.
Well, I'm honored. I thank God for this moment. I thank God for you. In fact, I thank God for everything.
Yes, absolutely.
That's one of my songs.
Good. That's awesome. Yeah, we're going to keep that in mind, too. All right, well, it sounds great. Well, before we get out of here, we're going to put one more plug in for PointeCoupeeReporter.com. PointeCoupeeReporter.com is Pointe Coupee's oldest locally owned and continuously operated news websites. Since 2012, they have been Pointe Coupee's news and information hub. Check them out at PointeCoupeeReporter.com. Until next time, this is David K. Gyro with my special guest, Reverend George Molex III, also called the Traveling Echo. And we'll see you guys next time. Y'all have a great night.